Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
I think that the main thing is just to do something, right? Doing nothing or overthinking it or overplanning it, planning to plan, all those things are an insidious trap.
All right, we're back. Today we're doing things a little bit different, but stick with it. I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Today we're talking with Jonas Koffler, and Jonas has just released a book. And there's 3 parts to the book, and we're going to dive into different parts, but there's a part specifically on starving artists, which I'm keen to learn about because I know there's a lot of people who want to get paid, or if you're already getting paid a little bit better for your creative endeavors. So Jonas, why don't you start off giving people just a 1-minute overview, because I know you're not a traditional artist, but you've done the deep dive on your book, and I think that we're going to learn a lot from the research that you did and all the prep that you had in putting this together.
Yeah, Mitch, happy to do so, and thank you very much for having me. It's a real treat. So as far as the book goes, so the book is Hustle, and the subtitle is The Power to Charge Your Life with Money, Meaning, and Momentum. 3 things I think that most artists appreciate and need to sustain their journey as working artists. And our motivation for writing the book was derived from a lot of social listening we were doing in the early spring of 2013, which culminated in a meeting of Patrick and I, one of my co-authors, along with Neil Patel, at South by Southwest. And we were trying to sort of suss out and examine what the undercurrent was in kind of this creative economy that so many of us as artists operate in. And so, as writers, we were listening for specific words, and the words that kept popping up was this word hustle. For a lot of folks, it's kind of a dirty word, or a word that means to steal or to con. It's derived from the Old Middle Dutch, the etymology meaning to shake. And so, we thought we'd take that riff of to shake. Since we were hearing hustle everywhere, it's like, okay, so we're talking about shaking things up, essentially. That's what this expression is, but it's a little more meaningful than that. And so we redefined it and constructed this definition. It basically says, it's decisive movement toward a goal. It's this notion of pushing forward, but it's decisive movement toward a goal, however indirect, by which the motion itself manufactures luck, surfaces hidden opportunities, and charges our lives with more money, meaning, and momentum. And so there's a lot to unpack there, but I think as individuals and as artists and as folks who kind of look at the journey over the long haul, not just one piece, but an entire body of work, we're really talking about surfacing our identity and also getting comfortable with this idea that our identity as creators is going to change over time, meaning we are going from who we are in this phone call to who we are to become via the pursuits that we make, these small bets that we make, whether it's a new work, whether it's a study we do that will lead to other pieces in our body of work, whether it's doing partnering on, for example, writing a book or doing a large installation or a mural or whatever it might be. These are, a number of small bets that we place. So if you think of it in sort of the Jungian, framework of like archetypes, right? Or individuation, filling up the bucket with all of these droplets of work. And eventually it overflows, and with that, not only are we making a statement about kind of our contribution to the world and to history and to culture and so forth, but it's going to surface a lot of luck for us. It's going to surface other opportunities, people that will discover us, and it's going to surface a lot of meaning for us as well. Right? We're going to sort of find out who we really are and what we've done, and people will judge us on the merits of those things. So our book deals with a lot of those things, those topics, and beyond that, as you mentioned, there is this riff around starving your starving artist, and I can kind of unpack that as well. But the basic idea is this, so if we reflect back on a period in history where there's this romantic notion of of being comfortable as a starving artist, and that creativity only comes through suffering. Well, I mean, to some degree that might be true, but that's not the end-all be-all. And I think that certainly based on our research, this myth of the starving artist, right, the idea of holding success in contempt has really created a lot of kind of bad juju, if you will, and influenced a lot of artists in the wrong way. And this idea that selling out and so forth is toxic. I think success is very much defined at the individual level. And for working artists, the success fuels confidence to explore new boundaries. And that certainly was true in Picasso's case. He needed financial success to remain uncompromising in his art, and over a very, very long career. And granted, he was very lucky, incredibly talented as well. But I think that the truth is that we're not celebrating money in and of itself. We're celebrating the money that money can, the good that money can do for you in your career, as a sustaining force. So what we're encouraging people to do is to starve the notion of the starving artist, right? Let go of your attachment to that, and instead feed the hungry hustler and become confident and competent in demanding respect and recognition and sale of your work. And that's really the spirit of at least one aspect of our book. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I love the alliteration there, starving the starving artist. And what was it? Helping the hungry artist?
So you starve the starving artist and you feed the hungry hustler.
Hungry hustler. There we go.
Right.
So I'm curious because there's the hustle. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's always like hustle, hustle, hustle. But then there's also the grind. And do you guys go into that or do you differentiate between the two of them, hustle and grind? Because I feel like there's periods when you're an artist where it's just continually doing the same thing over and over and over again, practicing, and you're in this grind. But for what you're proposing from your book, the hustle is different.
Yeah, so it is actually, I think, vastly different from, what I call a much more simplified concept of making success happen. What we try to do is make hustle a little more nuanced. Again, it's not putting your head down and running through a wall. It's not simply about grit and grind. I think that's implicit, that we're all going to work very hard to be successful, number one. And number two is that, it is a grind, and we are at war every day when we enter the studio. We might, or for myself, writing one sentence, it might take several hours, for me to be happy with it. That's the reality of the situation. For me, I've been able to work through the challenges. And one of the things that we recommend to people to kind of get beyond this idea of the madness of mastery or the perils of perfection, which is very hard to do as an artist, is to say, why don't you start with, and forgive the profanity, but why don't you start with some really shitty work, Mitch? And don't judge it to be at such a high level it has to be perfect. Forget that. Let's start with a study. And it can be a god-awful study, or in my case, a terrible script for a movie, or whatever it might be. Let's just start small. And instead of trying to produce the perfect work in a very confined period, let's allow ourselves to remove judgment or suspend judgment, stay in curiosity, and to work through a piece slowly and surely. And eventually we're going to arrive at a draft in the writing world that we like, or a treatment otherwise through design or whatever it might be, where it might be the 50th, but we're constantly working through it, right? And so the idea is spend what we call the 10-minute rule, is a very defined period where you just start, right? The toughest thing for I think any work is to start it. And once you get on the path, you're going to find a sense of flow. You're going to be able to do some trial and error and run some experiments and see what works and what doesn't, and work through those until you arrive at something you're happy with. And if not, then you throw it out and start all over again, right? That's the idea. So it is about sort of this experimentation over short periods. Again, this 10-minute rule, what we call the temple of doing. So it's focusing without judgment. So it puts you in a very productive sort of space and mindset. And instead of, again, striving for that perfection or mastery, just working through the process and allowing that to work you through to a place where you're confident, and then you can move on either to the next piece, or if you want to refine, work iteratively from there. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And we found that inside the community, where after having worked as a studio artist for so long and kind of gotten out of that, the desire or the ability to just sit and create was sort of gone. and having done what I just called intentionally bad art and then posting it inside the community was so liberating that, you just did something and you posted it, and it felt great not to put any of the sort of like the perfectionist expectations on yourself. So yeah, I'm right on board with you.
Yeah, and I agree exactly. I love the way you frame that. I mean, the idea is bad art can really lead to great art. So when you remove that burden, like that incredible, unbearable, crushing weight of mastery, it frees you up to actually do the work that you should be doing. So, that would be the thing that I want to recommend to people. I mean, for us to get this book done in less than a year, granted we had done a lot of the research, but the writing, which is very hard, very thankless work, was incredibly challenging, right? How do you say something in a new way when you're trying to describe personal innovation and sort of, historically where we are as a creative culture? It's not easy to do, right? And so you go through a lot of iterations, and thank God Neil and Patrick could give me constructive feedback, some of which I disagree with, and some of which we wrestled through until we got to a place where we were happy with it. We weren't striving to be Proust. We were striving to have a great work that was recognized and so forth. And we had some nice validation. I'll tell you this past weekend, actually yesterday being Sunday, where we were told that we hit not only the New York Times bestseller list, but we also were on the USA Today and Indie Books best-selling list and so forth. And that's just right out of the gate. So it's again it was just simple focus, working through the process, believing in it, and allowing us to iterate. And that's how we arrived at what we have. One of the other things I think is interesting, Mitch, that I think your audience would find supportive is this idea of stealing success. So when you're working through a study or you're on a project for a client or whatever it might be, especially for the freelancers, you may hit hurdles, or you may find that your work is roundly rejected, right? And it's important to find ways to steal success from other aspects of your life. So, if you feel like whatever you're producing isn't within the range or on the order that you want it to be, it's okay to step away from it. So if you have a significant other or family members or friends or other outlets, activities, walking in nature, meditating, unplugging from your computer, whatever it might be, use those as a means to sort of fill your tank when you're full of self-doubt or you're getting bombarded with negativity from your either your peers or your clients or company or whatever it might be in terms of your work. So find another means to sustain yourself and sort of steal success. That's another lesson that I think is kind of important for working artists.
So can you explain on that a little bit further? Can you go a little bit deeper on that one?
Yeah, happy to do that. So this idea that we're designed to do sort of one thing, especially as an artist, you generally have one forte. But when you're finding repeated rejection, let's say, something you spent a lot of time on, whether it's pieces that you're proposing for a new show, or maybe it's designed for an ad campaign that are poo-pooed by your creative director, whatever it might be, right? You're pitching your illustrations and some ironic copy to the New Yorker, right? Just one of the things I'm doing here in New York. But if you find you keep hitting walls and there's just negativity or rejection, it's important and it's easy to get down on those things. It's not an accident that 1 in 4 of us, or even 2 in 4 of us, are on some kind of mood stabilizer for depression and so forth, right? The world is tough these days. The idea is to try to not think or act so myopically, like you're looking through the lens of only that rejection that you receive, but instead to kind of pick your head up and look for other opportunities to bring in positive aspects of your life. So yes, you self-identify as an artist, right, Mitch? But beyond being an artist, you're also, a partner to someone else. You're a brother to someone. You might be a parent. You might have other businesses that you're involved in, other hobbies, or charitable work you do. It's like find other ways to sustain that sense of feeling alive and vibrant and supported by the universe, if you will. Don't feel like you're out there alone, and just because you get rejected, it's not the end-all be-all. You take it, It's sort of like an Aikido move. You let it flow and move on. You follow me?
Definitely. So very similar to gratitude. I was struggling a bit, but to me, it's like the daily gratitude affirmation kind of thing. Very similar.
Oh, totally, man. I mean, look, let's be honest, right? I mean, you're up in Toronto right now. I'm in New York. This is first world problems we're dealing with, Mitch, right? We're dealing with first world problems. Yes, we may get rejected, but we're not starving to death. Generally speaking, we probably don't have a gun pointed at us at this moment, right? Or
Nope.
won't tomorrow. My wife and I, for example, we got in the city on the 10th of September and went down to the World Trade Center and the memorial for 9/11, right? And there were a lot of innocent people who died that day. It was a horrific thing, horrible tragedy, right? And then, a week later, a few days later, rather, next weekend, we're 3 blocks away from a bomb that explodes in Chelsea, right? And the other bomb, the device that didn't go off, was 150 feet from the entrance of our hotel, and we were outside, right? For exposed at the same time the device was discovered. So of course, how can you not feel thankful to have another day to live and to create, right? I mean, come on, if you can pull yourself out of your own ego for a moment and just reflect on and be mindful of the opportunity that you have to create and how lucky you are to do that. It's an absolute blessing, right? And so, for people to not be aware of that or mindful of that, yeah, we can be angry as artists. That's fine. I get it. But, let's try to come back to the earth and ground ourselves in the reality that this is a gift. It's a gift to be able to create. It's a gift to be able to explore your creative capacity and to contribute to the world in some significant way. So I think that's absolutely essential.
Awesome. The main thing I think that would be very helpful to people is the momentum part of your book, where I've talked with a lot of people, they get stuck, they're not sure how to move forward, and it's like it's not quite like they're on a hamster wheel. It's like they don't even want to get onto the hamster wheel, and the hamster wheel is where they're going to develop the skills that will let them, as you're talking about in your book, start to create your own luck and have a lot of the amazing things happen. So they're not even getting to stage one. They're just stuck in the beginning. And I don't think it's the sort of the depression or the apathy that we were just talking about. It's something different. So what can you tell people that I guess can inspire them or give them some frameworks that can help them get on? I hate this hamster wheel analogy that I started with, but get on that track where they're starting to do things and get a little bit of momentum, then good things start to happen, and then more good things, and that snowball just continues to build until it has its own power to bring amazing things into their lives.
Yeah, so if I may, I'd like to offer an alternative to the hamster wheel. So the metaphor we use is the cycle of suck. And by cycle of suck, it is this repetitive cyclical form of learned helplessness. If you're familiar with the writing of Martin Seligman, he's a psychologist, of course, and his work is in the space of happiness and fulfillment. Well, this idea of the cycle of suck is that we're sort of dispirited and incapable of moving toward a goal. So we're inherently static, right? And then beyond that, we cannot help ourselves to break the cycle that we're in. And so every action we take really only increases our pain. And the problem with the cycle of suck is, and the insidious nature of it, is that subconsciously they not only lower our expectations and bring our confidence down, but they make us think that we can't really achieve or get more out of life, what we're really entitled to. And so there's a bigger theme in the book that we talk about called this sort of mediocrity of meh. And again, this kind of maps to this sort of collective malaise and this collective sense of, life's kind of gray. We're not really moving forward. We go into the studio and we work and we're not really succeeding. We're not really failing either because we're sort of doing something, but we're really kind of too complacent to change kind of how we operate. And there's this deep nagging feeling, what we call sort of the holes in our hearts. This is kind of the heart layer of the book, that we're missing out on something, right? That we're missing out on opportunity. We're missing out on getting the things that we should, the recognition or whatever it might be. And so the answer to your question is sort of twofold. The first thing that we would encourage people, to, especially artists, kind of dreamers and doers, to do is to move away from this idea of mastery, to move away from this mediocrity feeling, this meh in our hearts, and into what we say is sort of more of a place of welcoming risk. And so risk again is very much a subjective thing. It's kind of like oxygen. We all deal with risk on some level every day, right? And whether it's walking outside and avoiding getting hit by a bus, or pitching an idea to either a patron, or maybe it's crowdfunding or whatever it might be, a client for that matter, to launch a new project. But the idea is that we need to move into a place of discomfort, mild discomfort at least. And the way we do that is by absorbing more risk, not less risk. So we call this hormesis. And the way that we do that is by, again, running these small experiments every day. So it's breaking the routine, right, the routine of drudgery, and putting ourselves out in the world in a new way. And so the thing that I would encourage folks to do is to look at life, as a little bit more of not only a blank canvas, but a creative laboratory where they can run a lot of experiments as artists. Whether it's having new conversations with people every day, whether it's so pitching your work either online, whether it's trying small experiments to crowdsource projects, it's doing the things that you typically won't do, and it's finding ways to reach people in new ways as well, and doing the unconventional. So if you're locked in your studio and you're miserable and you feel like you're not moving forward, do something that moves you. Right? The first unseen law of hustle that we write about is this idea of doing something that charges you emotionally, charges you energetically, and allows you to run some small experiments. And again, it's very subjective, but even if you only do it for 10 minutes a day, right? This 10-minute rule that we describe in the book, we want you just to simply begin attacking a task with a 10-minute commitment of your time, right? Taking out 10 minutes and running some kind of small experiments. Don't judge it, just try it, look at it in a very excited manner, run your experiment, see what kind of results you get. Maybe you get recognition for your work, maybe you find someone interested in your work, etc. But this is the way to do it. And I can give you a very concrete example if that'll help.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm currently doing as I mentioned to you in the pre-call, a very large-scale international feature film based on a book that I was fortunate to work on a few years ago. That has now been optioned, and is we're knee-deep in developing the work now. So one of the challenges about doing such a big project is getting funding for it. So how the hell do you fund, a massive international feature film? Well, there are a number of ways, but I got a call from my producer, and we talked through it. And I was in LA a couple weeks ago, and I said, let's omit his name for anonymity, but I said, yeah, just give me 10 minutes. I'll get back to you with several options. And so what did I do? For 10 minutes, again, without judgment, I thought about, how the hell can I fund this thing through my network or through friends of friends, etc. So I went through these different ideas, and you can use this sort of the same canvas for funding a creative project, right? So the traditional would be find a patron, meaning find someone who has investment, who's capable of raising money as an investor or contributing to the project, right? Backing it, a supporter. Another would be go to a group that provides grants, right? So in Canada, it would be something like Telefilm, right? Or there are many other outfits out there. Koffler Center for the Arts, I think, is one of them. But the idea is there are plenty of organizations out there that award grants. Are you pursuing them? If you're not, you should be, right? If you don't have wealthy patrons to back your work, find out someone who knows a wealthy patron and begin a conversation. Get yourself in conversation and put yourself on a path to getting access to those people. The worst thing that happens is they say, look, we see you're working hard, that your work isn't something we're particularly interested in. So then you find out if there are other people. And the other way, obviously, is crowdsourcing. So in my case, I thought about people who might have an interest in getting a producer credit. So I amassed in 10 minutes this list of 3 possible channels that we could go through. And then worst case scenario, there's nothing wrong with crowdsourcing. It's a great way to go, right? It's a way to validate your ideas as an artist. So I called my producer back and said, here we go, let's move forward. And that set the wheels in motion, and we're well on our way to funding at least the initial phase of the project. So that really helped a lot. So it's those sorts of things, right? It's just short bursts of focus and thinking outside of the box and thinking unconventionally about ways that you can bring or reverse engineer your project from beginning to end and vice versa.
Now, I'm just going to play devil's advocate here for 1 second. You're obviously, very accomplished very confident person. But with the people that I've seen or have worked with in the art space, I don't feel like they're at that same level. And what's an example of an experiment that we could come up with right now that they could try, that they could do within 10 minutes, and just to prove themselves wrong, that you can invite exciting, random, new things into their lives very quickly and very easily, right here.
Yeah, sure. So, a number of examples. So let's talk about kind of plein air, right? So what if you're a painter or an illustrator? How often do you go outside and set up a space in a very well-traveled public area where people can see your work and interact with you, right? Might there be a way that you can create some kind of public installation where, Mitch, maybe you're illustrating, right? Kind of something large scale, or do something that invites the community in and then starts a conversation about the work that you're doing? Would that be something that might be of interest? Maybe it's a public mural that you're directing, and can provide tools for folks to get involved in. I mean, it's doing these small experiments. I mean, another thing you could do potentially is, if you're a little more reticent about kind of getting out there and mixing it up with people in public, is certainly joining a community online and putting your work out there and seeing what kind of feedback you get back, right? So the starting point is you're looking for those connections, and you're looking to surface interest from folks and enthusiasm or excitement. If nothing else, then maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's finding folks who aren't interested in your work and sort of avoiding those people at all costs, or taking their feedback and saying, what, this is actually really helpful. Thank you for that. So I think that the main thing is try to be a sponge, try to be interactive, and try to do some unconventional things every day that don't take a ton of time to prepare, but might just require you getting a little bit outside of your comfort zone and bringing the community in. Maybe it's an art class that you can do. It doesn't take very long to put together an idea for how you might teach in the community or get out and help people discover your work. Or certainly there are other ways to do it, but I think that the main thing is just to do something, right? Doing nothing or overthinking it or over planning it, planning to plan, all those things are an insidious trap.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like the idea of showing your work or going into a well-traveled place. I think that's great advice. I know for some people listening, it might sound really scary, but take your smallest sketchbook. Even if you are trying to be invisible, people will still see you, and it's not as scary as you think it is. And the people that do come up to you, they will be very curious and very interested. That you don't see artists drawing on the street a whole lot, and you can be part of that, and it will invite a new element of randomness and I don't want to say chaos, but new experiences into your life, which will then increase your energy levels, and more good things will start to happen from that.
Yeah, and I think adding on to that, Mitch, this idea of so this concept in the book is called hormesis, and hormesis is basically derived from this observation that repeated exposure to small doses of stressors doesn't weaken us. It actually strengthens us, right? So the idea of think about the sun. If we're repeatedly exposed to massive doses of sunlight, right, high intensity sunlight, well, we'll probably develop cancer and die. It's not a good thing. But instead, if there's small doses, it's going to strengthen us. We get small bursts of vitamin D. We feel good, right? We feel the warmth and so forth. Well, the same is true of getting out and mixing it up in new ways as artists, right? We want those small amounts of of pain or the small doses of pleasure, because those will enable us not only to gain confidence, but to gain some exposure to other people and get discovered in new ways, or discover things about ourselves that move us forward from who we are, our existing form right now, to the people that we're capable of becoming. And so, the idea is not to waste away or atrophy, but to give ourselves an opportunity to thrive and to give ourselves permission to thrive. And so there's a whole idea of taking small doses of risk is a really good thing. Okay?
Yeah, perfect. I think that's a perfect place to end. Any last words before we tell people where they can go and grab the book?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just encourage people to really think, if they're feeling stuck, to start leveraging this 10-minute rule. So if they're stuck in terms of their production, or they won't allow themselves to even begin without having fully formulated this perfect concept in their head, that's the wrong way. So what we instead recommend is please give yourself permission to make a ton of mistakes, to do the bad art that you describe, because that will lead you to the good art that you should be doing and are totally capable of doing.
Perfect. And so when we go to Amazon, is it just Hustle, or is there something else specifically that we should look at to grab the book?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there are a million Hustle books out there. This is a bright yellow cover with stacked letters, Hustle, and it's Neil Patel, Patrick Blaskowitz, and Jonas Koffler.
Perfect. And we'll have show notes, and we'll have the link directly to Amazon. So thank you so much, Jonas, for sharing all that. You really did all the heavy lifting on this, so I didn't have to talk very much. I appreciate it. It's been a long day today. Thank you so much. And if anybody out there is hustling, if you take some action from the book, I would love to hear from you, hear how it impacted you and what the results were. And thanks so much for hopping on the podcast.
An absolute pleasure, Mitch. Thanks so much, bud, and take care.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
You talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.